seen it.
Yes, I have.
You've seen a ship with black sailors that's crewed by the devil and captained by a man so evil that hell itself spat him back out.
No.
No.
Dia yang gua gorok depan lo.
You don't want to be doing that.
No, I really think I do.
Hey everyone, welcome back to No Intermissions, the double feature podcast where we pair the unpairable and link the unlinkable. Two unlikely movies are picked at complete random, and at the end of every back-to-back discussion, no matter how hard it may be, my guest and myself will find the connecting thematic tissue, whether it be from genre, aesthetic, motive, or style. As always, I'm your host, Jack Siddle, and welcome back to another episode. Last time you guys would have heard from me, I guested the lovely Bolter on, where we discussed sort of the existential crisis of two individuals in Michael Mann's Heat, and just the joyous upbringing. No cynicism allowed in Richard Donner's Superman. But this time, a new guest, a new double feature. You can find this gentleman over. He's got a absolute plethora of content over, whether it be on his solo channel, TimJongUn Productions, where he's doing sort of video essays deconstructing a lot of movies you know, or perhaps movies you don't know. And he's also the host of the Far Off Films podcast, where him and his two co-hosts sort of review and talk about new release movies, as well as pairing them with older recommended movies. It's Mr. Timmy Lee. Timmy, how are you going, man?
Hey, it's me, John Griffin, WWE Fit. No, I'm just kidding. I couldn't even fully commit to that. Yeah, it is I, fabulous boy myself, TimJongUn Productions,
Fabulous
Timmy
Tim.
Lee, the guy, yeah,
Fabulous.
the man. So, so
How we
also
feeling?
thank you for I'm feeling good. Thanks for asking, man. I was just gonna say, when you told me that this was the second episode of the podcast,
Yeah.
I mentioned this outside of the recording, but I was going to listen to the first episode,
Mhm.
just to get like a basis on like how this will be structured and everything, just to do my homework. But then there was no homework. There was no first
No.
episode, so I'm like, well,
I've thrown you in the
what
fucking
movies should
deep
you
end.
talk about? Yeah,
I'm
God, now I
holding your
gotta-
head underwater and go, talk to me about movies, with no sort of structure or homework on how to talk to me about movies.
I don't know how to talk about movies without
No,
first validating my opinions based on other people saying them on movies.
Exactly. No, but this is good because I've guested on Timmy's podcast previously, which you can go find. What movies did we talk about again?
Your Name and Weathering with You.
That's
so
right.
The complete opposite
and
of what we're talking about today.
and Megan. We talked about Megan, the movie that everyone remembers.
Oh yeah,
How could we forget?
that wonderful gem? Yeah, of course. How could I forget? It's this
I know.
year's. Did you see Night Swim? That's like this year's Megan.
I haven't.
But
No,
much,
that is
much
very.
worse.
It's a very appropriate analogy. Yes. Is that a Blumhouse?
Yeah.
I feel like Night Swim's a Blumhouse.
Yeah, it's also a Blumhouse. It's
The-
like if it's a January horror film, then like you can bet $60 that it's like it's gonna be a
60.
Blumhouse movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The very
Yeah.
the stock standard sort of January trash of where the Blumhouse movie sits every year.
Yeah, but at least with Megan, there was a dancing TikTok girl. Night Swim didn't even have that. It was just
There's no
Kurt Russell's
TikTok dances
kids
in Night
swimming
Swim?
around in the water. Unfortunately, no, there are no TikTok dancing
Ah.
girls in Night Swim. It's just
Then what's the
Kurt
point?
Russell's kid, and I don't know. There's no point in cinema. There's no point in movies really without a TikTok dancing girl. It's
I
just
know.
all fucking
Why,
worthless.
that's the only reason people go to the movies anymore, is to get a glimpse of a TikTok dance.
Absolutely, of course. You know how I grade movies. For every big anime titty there is, that's like an extra 2 stars that I add to my rating. So
Right. Exactly.
yeah.
Well, on that note, Timmy, what 2 movies are we talking about today?
Just some fucking lame dog shit that no one has ever heard of that probably don't matter within the world of cinema. I think the first one was called One Piece, and then the second was called the rating, and I
The
don't know where I
rating.
was going with that joke.
Yeah.
Yeah, the rating. So, yeah, we're talking about the raid redemption, or the raid 1, as other people like to call it, and
Oh,
then
yeah.
Pirates of the Caribbean 1, or Pirates of the Caribbean Curse of the Black Pearl.
There we
So,
go. You heard it here first. So,
mhm.
talking Curse of the Black Pearl from 2003 and pairing it with The Raid, or as Timmy, mentioned, some people call it The Raid Redemption from 2011. On
Do you know
that,
why they added that subtitle to the, like, because that implies that, like, I don't know, every time I see that the Raid Redemption, I'm just like, I just look at that and go, is this like a sequel to like
that's
another movie called The Raid or something like
that's
that?
the
Like,
weird
it
thing.
doesn't make any sense.
It almost like,
Yeah.
because I know they made The Raid 2, which I'm gonna have to check out, obviously, but that seems like The Raid
I think
2 seems like it should have been called Redemption.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it makes zero sense why the first one is called it, because I haven't seen The Raid 2 in a long while. I was gonna try and rewatch that one after I saw the first
Right.
one, but I just didn't have the time. But like in my memory, I remember being like, man, if the second one was called Raid Redemption, that would make way more sense. Like I don't know why they called the first one Raid Redemption at all. In fact, I think like the Raid 2 had its own like subtitle or something. I completely forgot. I'll look this up right now.
Dark of the Moon.
Dark of the Moon.
Revenge of the
Last
Fallen.
night.
Last night, yeah.
Um,
Age of Ultron.
wait, what was the Age of Ultron? What was the fourth Transformers movie called?
Age of Extinction.
Fucking, that was it. Yeah,
Yeah,
Age of
yeah.
Extinction. Yeah. So the second one is also technically called the Raid Retaliation.
Okay.
So I
Interesting.
guess that makes sense, but I don't know. Just call things the way they are. The Raid 1 and then the Raid 2. I just hate all this extra subtitle shit. It's like no one's gonna fucking remember any of this, you know?
Oh my god. No, you're so
Yeah.
right. Let's save the subtitle work for the raid discussion. This is
Okay.
we're already off to a banging start. So let's
Yeah.
talk about the first movie on our list. We are talking Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl.
You don't know what this is, do you? Aztec gold. The heathen gods placed upon the gold a terrible curse. 10 years we've searched. Every last piece we have found, save for this. Hello, Poppy.
They've taken Elizabeth.
Welcome aboard the Black Pearl.
We must save her. Where do we start?
Jack Sparrow. He talked about the Black Pearl.
Make a deal with him. He can lead us to it.
You forget your place. You are a blacksmith.
If you spring me from this cell, I shall take you to the Black Pearl and your bonny lass.
You're a pirate.
Forgot one very important thing, mate. I'm Captain Jack Sparrow.
Pirates of
Yeah.
the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl is the 2003 American fantasy supernatural swashbuckler film with an absolute star-studded cast with we're talking Johnny Depp, Jeffrey Rush, Orlando Bloom, and Keira Knightley, and is based on, I can't believe what I'm about to fucking say, is based on the theme park ride by the same name. And is directed by one Gore Verbinski. Now, Timmy, Curse of the Black Pearl. I know you are a huge fan of this movie. You can't get enough of it. You text me all the time telling me how much you love Curse of the Black Pearl.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Of course. Yeah, I can. Every time I cream my pants, I always think of Johnny Depp's mustache from Curse of the Black Pearl. Exactly.
Right, of
Yeah.
course. So obviously, Curse of the Black Pearl follows the story of one Captain Jack Sparrow with his with a mishmash crew he meets along the way, including one Will Turner, played by Orlando Bloom, one Elizabeth Swann, played by Keira Knightley. Their sort of back and forth romantic, conquest, which I'm sure we'll get into, and is in search of sort of the Black Pearl ship, which is helmed by Jeffrey Rush's Captain Barbossa. And they're just,
Mhm.
they're just doing pirate stuff, man. They're just looking for treasure. They're just sailing on boats. It's what pirates do. So let's get into it. Curse of the Black Pearl. I want to start off with you. Was this a movie
Sure.
was this a regular Timmy revisit as a young boy?
Um, so my history with it. S- I was very young when I first saw both this movie and then the sequels, Dead Man's Chest and whatever the third one was called. I can't remember.
The World's
The
End.
World's End.
Yeah.
No, wait, no, that's the Edgar Wright film. It's
Oh, at
At
World's
World's
End.
End.
At
That's it.
World's
That's
End. So
it.
I was
Yeah,
gonna say, yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
the Edgar
yeah,
Wright. Yeah.
yeah. And
There's no
I
pub
remember
crawls.
enjoying them. Yeah, there's no pub crawls, there's no aliens,
There's
no
no alien.
Simon Pegg, none of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember really liking them, because they were big. I mean, what's there not to like? Yeah, it's like you said, they're swashbuckling, like supernatural ghost, like pirate adventure type movies.
Mhm.
And they were like big pop culturally, so like there was no way I couldn't avoid them. But I haven't seen them since I was a kid,
Yeah.
and since then, I have watched other Gore Verbinski films. So Gore Verbinski is, in my opinion, a very hit or miss director. Like sometimes he'll make like absolute bangers. So when I think about my favorite Gore Verbinski film, it is actually Rango. That is my go-to
Mhm.
Verbinski film. I love Rango. I could like what that's the movie I could watch like repeat on end. But then you also have like his dog shit, so stuff like Lone Ranger and like I don't think I remember liking Cure for Wellness very much.
Okay.
And these Pirates movies are kind of somewhere in the middle for me. Especially after rewatch, because as you mentioned, I have talked about these movies before on my podcast, and you know I think in some ways they do hold up, but in other ways, they're kind of dated. They're kind of not as fun and not as interesting as I remember them being. They're like nice in the middle grounds between, the Rangos and the Lone Rangers for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I think I can agree. Like Gore Verbinski for me is like I think he is just extremely talented. I love pretty much. I'm the type of guy that even loves the Lone Ranger.
Okay.
Unfortunately, yeah. So
Well, I love Gore Verbinski too. He's a very interesting director, and it's why I'll always see anything he makes, no matter what. But
yeah,
like as I've said before, he's also very hit or miss. Like
yeah.
sometimes he'll hit and it's a banger like Rango, but other times, like you said, it's a Lone Ranger, it's a Cure for Wellness, blah blah blah, whatever.
Um, you did bring up some very, very fantastic points just then, because for me, these Pirates movies, like as you said, he's a very interesting filmmaker, and to watch someone so interesting and someone have such a distinct style operate within the machine of like a big conglomerate studio. At this point in time too, when like sort of Disney, especially Disney, would let actual artists make their specific sort of style of work, is
Such a
something.
wild time.
Yeah, so yeah, it's so sad to think about how like we need to go back to that sort of studio filmmaking, because I think I like this even more than I did previously when I was a bit younger, because I have got that sort of bias now where I'm like, yeah, make artists make art, even though they're working within these giant multi-million dollar studios. You can still see very much Gore Verbinski-isms, I guess you could say, within this giant grand work
Yeah.
of, yeah, it's really interesting to watch these. I need to go back and watch 2 and 3 eventually, but it's been really interesting to watch this one in preparation for this, in sort of the current climate we are now with, like, I don't mean to bring them up, but obviously the state Marvel's
No,
in
no,
now.
I agree, and I was gonna mention that. So I wanted to mention two specific things.
Yeah.
You mentioned like these Pirates movies are like kind of groundbreaking for their times because Disney actually allowed an artist to actually make the movie they wanted to fucking make and not make bullshit.
Yeah.
But you also have to remember that was kind of less Disney and more sort of like the times at the point, because you have to remember that this first film came out right after the Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Yeah, that's true.
And those series of movies prove that like if you let just an artist just do whatever the hell they want and make they can prove that they can make something like that is very attractive to like average moviegoers that will make a lot of money and will be huge like blockbuster popcorn entertainment pieces, but also like have a lot of creative voice, and be like masterfully made with lots of great, production design and writing and cinematography and directing and blah 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 whatever.
Mhm.
And I would argue that was like the perfect era for that kind of filmmaking where like these like kooky, crazy directors like were handed the keys to make these big budget movies. Cause Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, that's
I was
another
about to bring that up.
example.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
was
yeah.
around the same
That's the
that was
biggest.
around the
Yeah.
same time where they got to make these big budget movies. And like Gore Verbinski's Pirates movies just happened to be in that era and he happens to also fit that. But you also have to remember that there probably wasn't very high expectations for this film anyway, because it's based, like you said, it's based on a fucking theme park ride. Like,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I don't know what sort of quality you should be expecting from that, but
Yeah. Yeah.
but that's what I like about Gore Verbinski. It's like he didn't really he didn't really use that as a detriment against the film. If anything, he kind of used that to his advantage because there are a lot of like sections in the film that definitely feel like theme parky, if that makes sense. Like, like my prime example would be like the scene where what's her face, Keira Knightley's character, fuck, I can never remember her character's name, or Orlando Bloom's Will Turner
and
Elizabeth Swan.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Swan, that's it. When Elizabeth Swan like is on the Black Pearl and she discovers like all the crew members are like ghosts or ghouls or skeletons or some shit, and it becomes this like sort of like theme park ridey type thing where like Elizabeth's like, oh, this is the scary monster here, and then she's like jumping in a trampoline and all this other stuff. It's like it's very theme parky, but it works within the context of that film, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's like it's very stupid, it's very big budget, but it's very creative, like you could tell like someone thought of this idea. You could tell Gore Verbinski came up with this idea, came up with this specific moment and tried it out, and most people would say that it worked out in the end.
I couldn't agree more. You're so right. It's very broad. It's very silly, of course, very goofy, but it's also the way just Gore Verbinski structures these set pieces is so dynamic and fun. Even though like it's a point we'll bring up later, but the fucking runtime of this movie is insane. But at the same time, the action set pieces that he evokes within the sort of runtime, they just move and they're so fluid. Like you said, like the fact that this thing's based on a theme park ride is sort of, I guess you could say it's a win in the studio's eyes, because you're never going to have you're not going to have that weirdo stand up in the cinema going, they're not doing the fucking theme park like justice. Like you know what I mean? I think a lot of people, a lot of execs were sort of freaking out about that fact too, because they're like, it's a theme park ride. Like, how the fuck are we going to make this movie? At one point, I think they were contemplating if it was going to be like direct to video sort of thing. I read a really interesting fact that if it was going to be direct to video, I think Jack Sparrow was going to be played by like fucking Christopher Walken.
Oh Jesus Christ.
Yeah, so even a lot of actors previously before Johnny Depp entered the bit there, that there was people like, Robert De Niro was going to play Barbossa, I think, but even he had sort of like cold feet about if this was going to work initially, so he stepped away. So
oh wow.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the it went through a ton of rewrites too. So I think in the early 2000s it went through like 3 or 4 different riders, and the actual supernatural element, which I think I haven't been on the ride myself, but the supernatural element is very incorporated into the ride actually. So I think that didn't come into the script till much later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've always wondered what made Disney pick Gore Verbinski for this film. Like, I think that's a very inspired choice, but I've always wondered why they picked him. Like, did they watch, because The Ring came before this film, right? I haven't seen The Ring, so I'm
I
not
think
like
I think The Ring was
sure.
a year before, yeah.
Okay, so I would assume they saw The Ring and they thought, yeah, this guy, let's hire this guy.
Yeah, it might have been
to make our Pirates of the Caribbean,
We want, Jack Sparrow coming out of TVs. I think it would have been the same sort of model they do now, but they actually stick to it, where they hire sort of an up and coming interesting dynamic filmmaker, and they just give him a bunch of money and go make a movie. Except they do the exact same thing now and go make a movie, but with like about 20 asterisks next to that, where they're like, make a movie, but you know, we're going to be on top of you and making sure it's like it looks like every other movie. You know what I mean? So
Cram in Blueface Frazier, do it.
let's
You
do
know,
it.
like obviously,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, no, I remember I looked some things up about the film. Like apparently, like Jack Sparrow was like originally written for like Hugh Jackman or something like that, and like Matthew McConaughey was like supposed to be in consideration as well for like Jack Sparrow and stuff. Like it's all
Yeah.
this like crazy things where it's like, man, if Johnny Depp wasn't selected and it went to one of these assholes instead, like we would not only have a different Jack Sparrow, we'd probably have a different movie, you know, in general. And
Oh, without a doubt.
yeah, and I have issues with like Johnny Depp as an artist, not as a person. That's a separate topic that I'm going to stay way the hell away from.
Yeah.
But
That's a
as
whole
an
can
artist,
of worms.
as much as I dislike kind of like the Jack Sparrowisms that like a lot of his future roles would kind of inhabit because of this character, you have to admit he fits the role very well. Like I could not see Johnny Depp. I could not see anyone besides Johnny Depp
No,
playing
you're
this
totally
character,
right.
at least like this version of the character. Yeah.
It's obviously like it just speaks for itself by now, but it is just so iconic. It's like I can only imagine that Robert Downey Jr. took a lot of influence too from like his performance as Tony Stark. And not like they're two very separate characters, but just the very idiosyncratic nature of how the two performances like sort of they're just so different. And how Johnny Depp approaches this, where you know he's got like what is he took influence from like Keith Richards, I think. And it even hints within the context of the character in the movie that he's like brain damage from like sunstroke or something,
Oh
which is really
wow.
funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously like just the way this is the biggest long lasting thing without this entire franchise is him alone. Which
he
we
is
will.
literally the only reason why there are 5 Pirates movies. Like
He's got to be
as a whole. He's the only reason why this is a fucking franchise.
He's just
like,
that
and
magnetic.
it's just purely Johnny Depp.
Yeah, wasn't he fucking nominated for an Oscar for this too?
I think so for the first film. Yeah,
That's
which I think is
insane.
insane, but
that's crazy.
Honestly, that's kind of based. I respect that.
It is incredibly based, and it's not like a thing where it's like drop to your knees performance where you're just like sobbing, but it is different enough where you're like it's hard to explain. It's just so different.
I mean, yeah, and also you gotta give credit because like back in the day before these fucking Pirates movies happened, Johnny Depp at the time was like kind of this like young hotshot actor. You know, he was kind of like the Tim Cham of back in the day because he was in all a bunch of weird stuff. He was in like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. He was in a bunch of Tim Burton movies. You know, he was really dipping his toes in a lot of directors like forays and like trying out different characters and different roles. And you know, this was kind of another example of that where you know, he actually tried to make Jack Sparrow this like essentially this weirdo, you know, because when you think of pirates, Jack Sparrow is probably not the first thing that comes to your mind, but he basically made his character so interesting that in all honesty, and this is probably the first hot take I'm gonna make, is Jack Sparrow is such a fun and interesting character that he makes everyone else so fucking boring and so lame in comparison.
I think
maybe not Hector Barbosa. I think he's also a fun character, but like definitely for fucking Orlando Bloom and Keira Knightley, I think they are so lame and so boring in comparison to Johnny Depp.
Yeah, I think you're right with the Barbosa aspect where Jeffrey Rush seems to be the only one sort of matching his level because he's doing a lot of facial expressions and he's very over the top and cartoonishly, of course. But you're so right. I think Orlando Bloom is just flat out terrible in this movie. He is so bad. I've never really like drawn to him as sort of the action sort of star, but even in the Lord of the Rings movies, I think he's fine. But in this,
he was an it boy. Like he was in the biggest movie at the time, so they just put him in. And here's the thing though, because I do not think Orlando Bloom is a good actor. I barely think he's a competent like he looks pretty, he looks handsome, and that's why I put him in movies. But like but that's his thing. But like but here's the thing, in Lord of the Rings that actually in Lord of the Rings, Legolas has two characters. He is a badass, or he is a horny badass.
I
And
guess you could say the same
sorry, not
argument
in
for Will Turner.
yeah, but like it makes sense within the context of Lord of the Rings because that's just the character, you know. Like he's this stoic elf who's just a badass who can like do anything. He can kill an entire elephant and all like the orcs like riding the elephants and stuff like that. Like it makes sense within the Lord of the Rings, but it doesn't fucking work in this movie where it's like Will Turner's like an actual human character that I'm supposed to care about. I'm supposed to give a shit about his relationship with Elizabeth Swann, which I absolutely do not. And I think those two characters are like the worst part of these movies, and it's why each Pirates movie goes down and down further and further in quality because for each movie, like the movie keeps forcing me to care even more about their relationship when I just absolutely do not fucking give a shit. You know, it's like
Yeah.
I don't care, Disney. You're not gonna make me care.
Unfortunately, yeah, I would agree with you a lot in that aspect. I do think Keira Knightley has some moments. Unfortunately, she's just used for a lot of these movies as like the damsel in distress, which is unfortunate. But it does speak volumes.
I mean, she gives a better performance.
I
She
think
gives
so.
a better
I
performance,
think
but
so.
she's just as bad of a character. But her character is just as bland and boring as Will Turner.
It does speak volumes for itself though, that by like I think the fourth one they just dropped Orlando Bloom and Keira Knightley completely. Because their character is like given each other the googly lovey eyes, and they'll eventually swing a sword around or swing off a rope or swim. You know what I mean? It's just I think it's unfair towards them because in comparison to what Johnny Depp's doing, which is just so charismatic and different, it's yeah.
But I don't know. But at the same time, like even the first films, like the first film's tone is so goofy anyway. It's like the reason why I connect with Barbossa and Sparrow's characters is because I think the actors more or less understood what sort of tone Gore Verbinski was going for. But like Orlando Bloom, like just seems like he's trying to act badass, like he's trying to be like an Errol Flynn type like character in this movie, but that just doesn't work because that's not the tone the movie's going for. It's not trying to go for like something serious. You know, it has serious moments for sure, but like that's not the whole movie. The whole movie is just like it's called fucking Pirates of the Caribbean. Like get a hint. Like
exactly.
Pick up a clue already.
I think you're totally right in sort of the Errol Flynn aspect, because obviously Gore Verbinski's drawing from a lot of inspirations of like genre movies that came before this, and I think him and Orlando Bloom maybe not got onto it on set as in like butted heads, but I think there was a bit of thing there where Orlando Bloom was trying to mimic Johnny Depp's sort of idiosyncratic performance, and Gore Verbinski had to keep putting him in line going, no, this is your character, you are essentially playing like a dork. So even Orlando Bloom, I don't think he quite got it. So I pretty much can back you up on that Johnny Depp and Jeffrey Rush are probably the two biggest draws on who probably understood what they were actually working on.
The fucking side characters better understood the tone of this movie than either Orlando Bloom or Keira Knightley. Like
it's interesting.
The guy who with like the missing the glass eye or whatever, that guy, and then the other guy, the bald one, like they understood the tone way better than those two actors.
Yeah, of course.
But
no,
whatever.
You're totally right. Yeah, like, but when it's not doing sort of the goofy sort of cartoon characters projected into live action, it's doing like impeccable sort of set design and old-fashioned craft of Gore Verbinski, his analog filmmaking style with sword fighting and people driving these massive fucking ships around the ocean. A
lot of great practical effects,
incredible practical effects, and like just the set design and set pieces within them, like that whole sort of sword fight at the end between Barbossa and Jack, with
really great,
like sort of projecting the curse aspect into the fight itself, where they'll walk through the moonlight and they'll turn into a skeleton for 1 second, is so fucking clever.
I love that, but I think that's also like a double-edged sword. See, those moments where Jack and Barbosa and the crew like briefly go back and forth between skeleton and fleshy are great. I think those are great moments of filmmaking, but I think the actual CG where they become skeletons, I think is incredibly dated. I think like it becomes super uncanny valley to me. Like I just it really takes me aback when I have to actually look at the skeletons and like see their faces up close. Like I'm sure at the time they were like revolutionary. I'm sure at the time they were really great looking CG, but like as a person alive in 2024,
Yeah.
I think for me it's very dated. Like it's not like horrible or anything. Like I'm not like so taken aback that like I hate the movie or
No.
something.
No.
But they're very dated, yeah, which is weird because like when did the sequel come out? 3 years
Well,
later after
I
this,
was going
right?
to say
Yeah, like
that's
the
a
CG
whole
for
point. Yeah, that's a whole point of discussion for the
yeah,
sequels. That's their whole thing is the special effects in that. They're
CG is
just look
great.
phenomenal.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
they look
still hold
phenomenal.
up to this day,
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
like the
yeah.
opposite of what the CG is in like modern Disney movies these
Yeah, it's really
days.
weird.
So,
This is what I mean. It's like
yeah.
almost a movie lost to time because I doubt, because I listened back to your podcast and I think Jules mentioned it. It's like, we're never ever going to get a fucking movie like this ever again in terms of like a big studio blockbuster. In terms of like the
Not from
practicality,
Disney at the
not from
least.
definitely not from Disney.
Yeah.
Disney's too busy. Disney's whole model is rush out as much content as we can, no matter sort of the end product.
Hit the spam button.
Hit the
Don't stop
spam.
hitting the spam button.
Yes, exactly. In terms of like spend a good amount of quality time letting artists make something like this, which we've mentioned probably isn't perfect, but it's miles better than what we're getting now in terms of the big.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I would sell my left nut to get more movies like this instead of another shitty cash grab like live action remake. I would do anything for that
Mm-hmm.
to happen.
It's also unfortunate too that even the later Pirates movies sort of gave into the model too of the modern day sort of Disney model of like the universe building and sort of the ugly post-production glaze over everything. Like the fucking I could only bear about 10 minutes of it, but the Javier Bardem character in the latest one is just fucking terrible.
I don't think I've ever finished that film.
Yeah, I
Although,
could only bear
wait,
a
no, it
couple
seems
minutes.
like I have finished it.
That
don't
speaks for
remember
itself. You can't even remember it.
Yeah, I have a rating for it, but I actually do not remember ever seeing this movie ever in my entire life.
Interesting.
So, yeah, like yeah, but I think it also comes down to the director as well, because like I'm looking at the directors for the fourth one. It's like Rob Marshall, the guy who did the fucking Little Mermaid remake, you know? So like we're
Exactly.
not exactly dealing with like a high quality director. And then like the fifth one is directed by
Like
the
a
duo that did Maleficent or some shit. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's not like
say-
we're dealing with like quality directors anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I guess you could say Gore Verbinski was almost like a work for hire for this, but at least he's interesting.
Yeah.
And
And he actually gave a shit. Like he actually cared with like about like what he was making. You
Gave
know,
a
like
shit.
you could argue the same thing. Like Sam Raimi was like technically a for hire director for the Spider-Man movies, but he gave a shit. He cared about like what he was making, and he tried to make sure that the films were of utmost quality as possible. And Gore Verbinski did the same thing here with the Pirates movies. Because if he didn't care, then why would he give so much of a shit about like the cinematography or the CG or the special effects? You know, like.
You're exactly right. Imagine storyboarding your fucking blockbuster. Imagine what a time we used to live in. It's depressing to think in comparison now, because I think I read an article, it was a little while ago, but like sort of the main focus now of what a larger Disney blockbuster will do now is sort of get the committee in, work sort of workshop an action set piece, and then work the story around that. So almost the complete opposite of what we're getting here and back in like 2003 and what we'd get in the sequels. Even though like the third one isn't nowhere near a perfect movie, 10 times more interesting.
It's not good.
10 times more interesting.
Oh yeah. I would sooner rewatch that third Pirates movie than I don't know what the fuck Disney has been making these days.
Captain Marvel 5?
Captain something. One of the captains. Captain Crunch.
Captain
That's
Crunch.
it,
I think that's the
yeah.
latest one. Yeah. Yeah. I can't wait for that
Yeah.
one. But yeah, do we have like a favorite sequence or moment within Curse of the Black Pearl?
Not
moment that
necessarily.
stands
Well, I
out.
do have sequence. Well, not necessarily. See, I'll get to sequence, but I just wanted to briefly mention. I think the best thing about this film, and I would argue the entire franchise, well, not the franchise, maybe just the trilogy, is the music. I think the music is like the best thing about this movie. It is iconic for a reason. It
Stands
is
out.
like, yeah, it is. The action and the music also like helps a lot of the action scenes as well. Like, and there's such a banger, like da 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 dun da 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 dun da da dun 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 da da. Like, it's such a banger of a tune. It's catchy, you know, but and it also fits within the tone of the film. Like it is easily the most memorable thing about this movie. Like, it's arguably one of the best film scores ever, you
I
know,
think
and
so.
it's like it's embedded in pop culture. And yeah, like this movie wouldn't be nearly what it is, or any of the movies, without I think it was Hans Zimmer who did the score. I think it was like someone else for the first one,
I
and
think
then
it was
like
someone different for the
Hans
first
Zimmer
one,
for
and
the
then Hans Zimmer
sequel.
for the other ones. Yeah, I think you're totally right in saying,
Gotcha. Yeah.
like, obviously Johnny Depp's performance and the score are sort of the long-lasting legacy of the main trilogy, at least on why they stand out
Yeah.
and why they've
Mhm.
lasted so long, as you mentioned it, in just pop culture in general too. But we talked about score being a big standout. Another thing that, because this is my first rewatch, I believe, since I was a young boy, I forgot how sort of violent this movie can get. In terms of like its rating, of course, obviously you can't show uh too much blood or gore, but like there's people getting
Yeah, but
shot in
at the
the
same time,
yeah.
oh, sorry, go ahead, finish your thought.
No, I was just gonna say I was sort of taken aback with uh how much like off-screen stabbing you get. There's one point where a dude just gets flat out shot in the face. I think there's I think there's a rape joke in there at one point with Elizabeth Swann.
I'm glad you pointed that out, but at the same time, again, it's like a double-edged sword type thing. Like,
Hmm.
I I really fucking hate that shit though. I really hate
Okay.
those like cutaway violence type thing. Because every time I see that, I'm just like, oh yeah, I forgot. I'm watching a Disney movie at the company that makes movies for babies, you know, like and this is obviously not a movie for babies, obviously, but like
No.
I really hate that shit. Like when it's just they're like the movie just like pussies out and like cut away like from the more violent like scene. Like conceptually I like the scenes, you know, where um the bald guy like shoots the butler at the house
Yeah.
in the face, but you don't see the blood, you don't see the impact, like, and there's a lot of that too. Like when I think about violence in this film, like one of my favorite moments is when Jeffrey Rush gets shot, when like Johnny Depp shoots him and he like rips his shirt open and like blood starts squirting out. Like
Oh,
that is
right.
awesome because you can actually see the impact of that hit, like you can actually see some level of consequence that's happening. But for like most of the other action scenes, it's not like that at all. It's like they constantly cut away from the action. They cut away from the impact. It's like I'm not asking for like some Evil Dead level like crazy violence or anything like that. But all I'm asking is like if you're going to show me sword fights and people getting shots, getting shot, like I want to see that, you know, I want to see the impact being made. I want to see someone get inflicted with damage, you know, from the hit that the person made, you know, like because that wasn't in like say Spider-Man trilogy, Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, you know, that wasn't in Lord of the Rings, that wasn't in, you know, Christopher Nolan's Batman movies or something like that, you know, like those are all PG-13 films, you know, so I don't know why this didn't have to either. Like this is a movie filled with fucking ghouls,
I know there's
you
literally
know,
a boat full of dead dudes.
yeah, but they can't show me like a satisfying death scene. Like, come on.
I don't know, man. That really weird shot where that pirate carrying all the treasure gets just shot, absolutely obliterated with that cannonball is pretty fucking fantastic.
Oh, that was cool. Yeah, I mean, I like that.
That got the
Obviously
hardest
they're not
laugh
going to
out of me in the
show.
entire movie. That nameless one
Yeah,
pirate just got the most gruesome death in the entire movie. Oh, so good.
his name is I named him Hamilton. He
Hamilton.
looks like a Hamilton.
He does look
Yeah,
like a Hamilton, actually. Fuck Hamilton.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Fuck Hamilton.
The action in this reminded me a lot of the, as you mentioned, the Sam Raimi movies, but you disagree?
I mean, it definitely reminds me, but again, like when you watch the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, you can see the impact being made. Like when you when you watch Green Goblin punch the shit out of Spider-Man at the end of Spider-Man
Okay, that's a
1,
good point.
you
That's a
can
good
see
point.
the punch being made. You can see, like, there is literally a scene where a bomb explodes in front of Spider-Man's fucking face as he flies back through like heaps of walls. And there's nothing like that in this movie. They're always cutting away before the stab gets hit or the gunshot bullet shoots someone, you know, like. And again, like, I'm not saying this movie should be R-rated or anything. Like, I'm not saying like I'm not even necessarily saying that it should be like the Spider-Man movies. I'm just saying when you're showing me something like, say, sword fights or people getting shot, I want to see the impact of that. I want to see the consequence of that. Like, don't cut away. Like, I'm a grown ass man. Like, I want to see violence. Like, I'm not. Stop treating me like a baby, Disney. You know?
Yeah, it is. It is.
So-
I to completely understand your argument. It is sort of hard though to have sort of, I don't know, movie. I guess you could say is aimed at 10 to 12-year-olds and you know, include a lot of sort of sword heavy sequencing and cannonballs and as you mentioned, just the whole plot of the curse with the skeletons. Like it I don't know. It's hard.
They literally show characters getting drunk off rum. Like, come on. We all know what kind of movie this is.
Yes, exactly. Gore Verbinski, you could
Yeah.
tell Gore Verbinski was on the very edge going, I just want to, you know, just let me do this. Yeah, but there was that clear sort
Just let me see a sword go through a person. I want to see the cold steel go through that British soldier's nice warm flesh.
oh my God.
Let me do this. Let me do this, Disney.
Let me
So,
do
like,
this.
which doesn't make sense because it's like, because Jerry Bruckheimer produced the movie and like
Yeah,
he's
that's
known for
good
big
point.
like R-rated action movies. Yeah, like, come on.
This even does feel a lot,
Whatever.
it's very Bruckheimer heavy in terms of sort of the romantics, large swings it takes.
I will say one other thing though,
Yeah.
and I think this is made significant because of the fact that I watched the raid before I saw this one.
Mhm.
I do like the practical fight scenes. I like the fact that you could actually see the people swinging their swords, but it is also very obviously like they had to use like stuntmen for a lot of the fight scenes as well. Like
Yeah.
in that sword fight between Jack Sparrow and Orlando Bloom, there are a lot of like long shots of the characters like hacking their swords against each other while like on the plank with the wheelbarrow or whatever when they're on like the ceiling and stuff like that. Like to me that I could like tell like, oh yeah, those are very obviously stuntmen, and you know that's fine. That's like actors are actors first. They are not they're stunt people second, so I get it. They probably can't do every single action scene on their own, but I would just prefer that if you're going to use stunt people, you just do a better job of hiding the fact that they're obviously stunt people. I don't know.
Yeah.
This all sounds nitpicky, but like again, I saw the raid before I saw before I saw this one, and we'll get into that later. But like that's a film where it's like you can clearly tell that the actors who are in the movie know how to fight. They are doing their own stunts and they do a great job doing their own. They're not hiding anything. And this one, it just feels like they're sort of hiding. I mean, you can still see the fight scenes. So like, I'm not complaining. Lots of great medium shots of the action scenes, lots of great,
Also great moody lighting.
long-ish takes.
Yeah.
Yeah, lots of great moody lighting. You know, like the
Yeah.
action scenes themselves are good. They're a lot of fun, and I really enjoy them. But you know, there are just all these little like annoyances that I just don't particularly resonate with. That I'm just not a big fan of. But again, I guess I can't. I guess I can't take. I can't bake my cake and eat it too. Is that the expression?
I
don't
think
know,
so.
but
I think you
yeah,
got
you know
that
what I
one
mean.
right. Yeah. With that, yeah, no, I think we probably pivoting towards final thoughts on Curse of the Black Pearl. This is probably just the time, you know, we wrap up any sort of thoughts we may have left out, any scenes we left out, any sort of lines of dialogue that we really like that we want to mention right now. Pretty much just a continuation of the discussion while wrapping up at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But no, you go first, Tim.
As I like when Barbosa says apple. It's fun. It's funny.
That whole sequence too.
Also remember.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh fuck! I'm glad you brought that up because Oh my God, when I was rewatching that scene and Hector Barbosa is just like, come on, eat, and then he's like, drink the wine, and he's like, and then the apple, and then Keira Knightley just kind of like looks at him, and I immediately thought to myself, if I was like Keira Knightley's character, I was like, is this some weird fetish that I'm fulfilling for you or something? Like me
Why are you
eating in
filming
front of
this?
you, like, yeah, yeah. Why is your hand in your pants? Like, explain yourself.
Explain
But then
yourself.
obviously, yeah,
Yeah.
but then like obviously it's just a excuse to explain the curse, which I think is pretty well, expositioned. Exposition is like a
Exposition
give or
heavy,
take
but
type
it's
of
like
thing where it's
sort
like,
of inevitable in a movie like this too.
yeah, but at least it like you're watching shit like that and like it fits well with what you're with the exposition, if that makes sense.
Exactly.
But so
I think
and remember when Zoe Saldana, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Remember when she was in the movie? I
that was
forgot about that.
that was a fucking jump scare. I did like a double take at my
Yeah.
TV. I was like, what? I was like, everyone's
Was
in
that
this
Lou
everyone
Gamora?
yeah, everyone's in this movie. I was like, fucking Zoe Saldana's in it. That's weird. Apparently she did not have a very good time filming this movie, which was unfortunate.
Really?
Yeah, I think a lot of the crew weren't too good in terms of like they were treating a lot of the crew ranked on their stardom, which is unfortunate.
Yeah,
But yeah,
that is unfortunate.
no, but like the sort of Gore Verbinski's obsession with like taking a lot of themes and aesthetics from older adventure genre films, but adding sort of the craft of new technology, where I think that's probably its strongest standpoint within the entire trilogy, not just this one in particular. I think that stands out amongst the rest. Like as we've mentioned too, sort of Depp's performance, the score, of course. Which I can only imagine. Like I'll have to go back and rewatch 2 and 3, but I think the score actually improves and sort of becomes more dynamic as it goes along, which is really great. But obviously,
I think I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, obviously the special effects, hit and miss. Not absolutely ruin the film, but it is a movie of 2003, just like we've mentioned time and time again in this discussion, like sort of the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie, just like that one. There's still effects in a lot of the movies at the time that still just sort of don't hold up. Even though it's weird because we've talked about the effects on the skeleton guys, but I think that whole sequence of Keira Knightley running around on the boat full of the dead dudes, I think all that looks pretty good.
I mean, yeah, it's well shot.
When she's suddenly in a Scooby-Doo movie.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying the way it was shot was dated at all. I think that itself was very well shot. I'm saying the special effects in that moment was dated. And yeah, like you said, it becomes like it's like, what is this Scooby-Doo bullshit? It's like what are we doing? What just happened here?
I love all
like
that
it,
stuff.
Yeah,
It's
fun.
Fun. That stuff has always stood out to me, where the movie stops for a second and quickly becomes something else. Like even for example, like when the movie stops being sort of the swashbuckler adventure movie and just becomes like a flat out sort of war epic on the sea with the cannon battle, and they're firing cutlery out of the cannons, which is really fun.
Yeah, almost like Master and Commander.
Yes, which I think was
Russell Crowe film. Yeah,
absolutely. And you got to give props to the monkey. It was one of cinema's best monkeys, in my opinion.
Yeah, the best movie monkey since the Nazi monkey from Raiders of the Lost Ark.
It's the Nazi monkey. Yes, absolutely. You and I should compile a list of cinema's best monkeys.
Yeah, the Nazi monkey, Abu from Aladdin.
Yeah, the monkey from Night at the Museum. King Kong.
Yeah, the monkey from Night at the Museum. King Kong, PJ's King Kong. The King Kong that's dating Godzilla in the recent movies. Is
that real?
I don't know.
Fucking with me?
I mean, they fought each other in the last one. I'm assuming they're just now hooking up afterwards.
Okay, fair enough.
Because what else? Are they gonna fight again? Are they gonna fight again? Like,
no.
Where else can you go from there?
Yeah. They either got to fight or fuck. That's the rule.
Yeah. Mighty Joe Young. That's another monkey.
Oh, true.
What's
that Clint Eastwood movie? What's that Clint Eastwood movie where he has the monkey?
There was a Clint Eastwood movie with a
Yeah,
monkey. I
him
don't
and a
remember this at
monkey.
all.
It's like Turner and Hooch, but Clint Eastwood and a monkey.
I don't know. I'll have to look this up. I was gonna say, oh, the apes from Planet of the Apes,
There we
all of
go.
them,
There we go. All of them. All of them. That's a lot of monkeys.
all of them. Yeah, a lot of
That,
them.
in fact, I
Yeah.
think that's a planet of them. I think that's a planet of monkeys.
Yes, if only there was some way to indicate just how many apes were on this Planet of the Apes. Fuck, I had like another good one, but then I just completely forgot. I just had a brain fart. I don't know. I'll come back. It'll come
We'll
back
come
to me
back.
at
We'll
some
come back to
point,
the monkeys.
so,
Anyway, have we
yeah.
got any more points on Curse of the Black Pearl?
No, not really. I mean, it's a
Okay.
fun movie. I don't love this as much as, my co-host, but
hmm
it's a good movie for what it is. Um, as far as like art, like director friendly, artist friendly, like blockbusters, this would probably be nowhere near on the top of my list. But like I keep saying, it does have good stuff. It's fun for what it is, and yeah, I mean, there's not much more I can say. It's just a fun movie.
Oh
So,
yeah, man. No, I couldn't agree more.
mhm.
So I think
Yeah.
that's going to do us on Pirates of the Caribbean: Curse of the Black Pearl. We'll be right back. We are talking The Raid, or if you like, The Raid Redemption.
Selamat pagi. Mungkin Anda sudah mendengar kalau kita kedatangan tamu tak diundang. Selamat bekerja. Dan jangan lupa bersenang.
We are back. We are talking The Raid, or in some countries, The Raid Redemption, the 2011 Indonesian action thriller film with starring, this is going to be this. I'm sorry for whoever I'm about to offend. I'm sorry. I'm going to have trouble announcing these. Iko Uwais, Joe Taslim, Donnie Alamziar, I'm going to say, and Yayan Ruan, and is directed by one Gareth Evans. So, coming off the heels of Pirates with the Raid. Anyone unfamiliar? Obviously I just mentioned the Indonesian action movie that takes place, almost serves as sort of like a video game movie where a group of sort of police officers raid this building that is known for just harvesting the worst of the worst criminals, drug dealers and rapists and murderers, and there's sort of like a little drug den going on in there even, which causes a really fun set piece. And their main goal is to collect and arrest the main head honcho up the top, who is just like almost serves as like a crime kingpin, who is just like this whole building almost serves as like hell on earth, because there's just the worst of the worst happening in this building, and it's up to this job of like small police officers to stop it and make sure it doesn't continue going on. So Timmy, The Raid, what do we think?
It is in my opinion one of the finest action films of the modern era. Because I mean, there is I had if you thought I had a lot to say about Pirates, I definitely have a lot more to say about this one. This one starts out John Woo and then ends with Jackie Chan / Sammo Hung, and dude, I am all the fuck for that.
Yeah, I know. How good is this movie?
Yeah. It is very good, but honestly, even better than I remember. So my history with this film, so I first saw this when I was maybe like 14, 15. I was like trying to watch as like many action movies as I could, and I always liked these. I always liked this and The Raid 2 just fine. I wasn't into the hype as much as everyone else was, but I definitely really liked them, and I haven't seen this movie since. And I'm glad that I'm rewatching this one, especially now, because tastes and my opinions about action movies have changed since then. So now I've kind of got to this point where, in my opinion, what I consider to be a good action, well, not necessarily like a great action movie, and even an amazing action movie is, and I'm going to quote one of your favorite movies, Heat. Al Pacino summed it up best when he said, "Don't waste my motherfucking time." I think that is the perfect summation to describe what I want from action movies. I want action movies and even horror movies to an extent. I'm categorizing them this as well, which is like, all right, I want you to cut the bullshit, cut the fat, like don't waste my time with pointless exposition or monologues or dialogues that won't matter, that I won't remember by the time like the action scenes happen. I don't care about any of that. Just cut the bullshit and just get straight into the meat of the film. And I, in my opinion, that is what this film does, like really, really magnificently well. Like
Yeah.
there are like the first like 5 minutes are just like, okay, like great. He has a family, you know, he has a wife, and he has a son coming soon, that he'll raise, whatever. But like, in all honesty, like, considering the situation that he's in within the context of like the apartment building where every like resident is coming after him, and he's surviving all these like gunshots after machetes after brutal fist fights, it's like, can't him just wanting to be alive like be enough of a motivation for the guy? You know, like the dude is in a really anally fucked situation. Just like have him wanting to live like be enough of a motivation. But whatever, that's just like a minor nitpick, because taking aside from that, this film does, in my opinion, what every action movie does. Like, just get straight into the action. Like by like the 10-minute mark, like in any other like boring action movie like this would have been like the climax of the film. But this is like the first 10 minutes. The first 10 minutes, these gangsters are shooting these cops. Well, first like the cops are arresting these people, so it's like this buildup of tension, and then the gangsters are like shooting them, picking them off one by one, and then eventually like they need to like rely on their wits. They need to like rely on like an exploding canister and like a refrigerator and a sledgehammer and all this other stuff. Just basically like thinking on the spot, avoiding these gangsters. And it's like so intense and so like adrenaline fueled. Like you don't even have a time to think about what the fuck you're watching, because we're already on to the next action scene. And then when things starts to slow down, it makes sense, because we were on a high of like bullets after bullets after bullets. But we're going slow not because you know, the movie's getting boring. We're getting slow because we're now transitioning to a different type of action style. We're now transitioning to a different type of action movie. Like the first like 20 minutes, we homage John Woo. All right, great. Now we're gonna get into some like classic wuxia / Bruce Lee / Jackie Chan, Sammo Hung style action movies where the main characters go up against these like guys with machetes and shit, and then eventually the final climax of the film is, you know, the main gangster villain's right hand man like duking it out against like the two guys at the same time. It's like, it's so great. They're building off one action scene off the next, and it all like fits so well. Like you know, and as someone who grew up with, you know, Hong Kong martial arts action movies, like this checks marks all the boxes for me. There's not a single point where the movie slows down. There's not a single point where the film drags. Like I am so entertained from beginning to end. You know, like there is like a little fat that could be trimmed out, because like I said, I'm just like, I don't really give a shit about like the fact that, you know, he has a family. You know, that's such a tired trope and cliche anyway. I'm genuinely shocked that they didn't like make fun of that trope in the movie anyway, but you know, whatever. But yeah, just like so much to say. I'll end it there, you know, and get into the nitty gritty later. But yeah, those are like my first general thoughts.
First of all, phenomenal first thoughts. I think you're totally right in saying the movie's main focus is no fat. Of course, I was also a bit. It's not so much. It is cliche. It is conventional of the whole sort of. It's very sort of Roland Emmerich-ish of the wife at home is pregnant and he's got to make it home to make, you know, the baby's about to be born in a couple months and I got to make sure I'm home and alive to witness that and start my family.
Like all typical Michael Bay shit as well. You
all
know,
that stuff's really boring, and of course it's been done. And it's also very odd for this movie to include that with a movie that's main focus is nothing but just the craft of nihilistic set piece after nihilistic set piece. There is
Yeah.
I will start us off here before we actually start talking about the movie in depth and all that. I'm a very hard man to sort of get a visceral reaction out of with gore because I'm normally fine with gore. There has been a couple moments in this movie that made me flinch. Good Lord. Uh, Gareth Evans, I believe the filmmaker is. The man knows how to sort of craft a really compelling image where through like, you know, just absolutely bone shattering gore and violence in his movies, whether it be through something to do with a gun, a machete. As Timmy mentioned, there's even a whole sequence with a fucking fridge that they make into a bomb, which is just phenomenal. You know, people just being thrown out of windows. There's just leg tendons being torn left and right. There's necks being snapped. There's heads being shot. There's necks being stomped in. It's a movie where it's a movie by the time you get to like the final 5 minutes where they finally reach their goal, you just find yourself able to like sort of exhale again. You're like, oh fuck. You know, it's like it's one of those. But yeah, no, we will get into specifics. So as you mentioned, it does take a lot of influences, stuff from like John Woo, which is phenomenal. All the gunfights in this movie is incredible. That whole fucking sequence where the boss informs the criminal residents of the building, like if you shoot these cops, you're gonna live here, you know, practically for free. That whole sequence where those people with the guns come out and start shooting at the remaining of the cops, fucking insane. I was like I was literally on
is fucking awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
that made me almost poop my pants. Like the scene where I fucking love that. I can like it's so burned into my memory where the cops are like checking a door just to see if there are any like gangsters inside. But while they're checking, the camera like pans up and you can see the gangsters like pointing their guns in the general area of where the cops are, but they don't know where specifically
they don't know
are,
where they are.
But
It's all
only
pitch
when,
black. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all pitch black, but it's only when the cop like shoots the shotgun where like it flashes, and then the gangsters can like briefly see where they are, and then they start firing in the and like even one of the cops are like, wait, no, don't shoot the shotgun.
Yeah.
You're gonna reveal our location, but he does it anyway, and then yeah, they get anally blasted like hard from the gangsters firing their gun. It's such a well crafted scene, like this sort of like slow mo shit. I slow mo is like a very sort of I mostly have negative connotation to stuff like that. Like normally I think slow-mo is such a really lame like attempt to make things seem cooler than they actually are. But this is a film where like slow-mo actually enhances what I'm watching. It actually like adds to the tension of the film. And in stuff like that, it like genuinely made me like left me at the edge of my seat. Like this is I think one of the good instances where like slow-mo actually adds to the movie and doesn't like and it's not some like stupid attempt to like make something more cool than it actually is, you know?
Yeah, and as you said, it's really refreshing to like sort of the decision making of these characters, as you previously mentioned. Like it was really like an alien concept for me to just watch like a straightforward action movie that has only three things on its mind. To have nihilistic gore in it that literally makes you flinch. To even though it's an incredibly ugly subject matter, to look this gorgeous, and the importance and repercussions of every fucking decision you make in a situation like this. All perfectly combined in like like a 90-minute runtime, which is insane.
Like flies by. Like
it's crazy. And the fact too that it never gets boring, where it's all like, I think I was watching some behind the scenes stuff. Gareth Evans, the director, said he was growing up obsessed with sort of action and genre movies taking place in one location. And fuck, man, he utilizes this so well.
Yeah, it almost kind of feels like a horror film at some points.
Yeah,
where it's almost kind of like a Saw movie where like the character's trapped in one single building and like they're fighting to escape, to leave, to make it out alive and stuff like that. It's really good. I mean, it's obviously an action movie more than anything, but it conceptually this could also work as like a almost like a Panic Room.
Oh yeah, well, just the idea that you're trapped in this building full of like 100 different maniacs whose main goal of the day is just to kill you. So that in that aspect alone is like very frightening. But even like just sequences that stand by themselves, like sort of get a horror vibe. That whole sequence where they're in the wall and he's like stabbing through the wall to one of the main goons is like stabbing his machete straight through the wall to find out if they're
Great
in
use
there.
of tension.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. I was holding my breath. It was crazy.
Yeah. And I love like, because like in any other action movie like this, like I don't really know, but like what I'm trying to say is I love that moment where the main character like puts his finger on the blade so that like once the machete guy like pulls it out, like he can like wipe the blood off the blade
Right.
as well, so that it doesn't hint that he's in there. I that's such a minor detail that they didn't have to do, but the fact that they did it is really goes to show how much the director really gave a shit. Because yeah, and to me also, and if we're gonna talk strictly about the action scenes, this is exactly what I want. I hate what I'm gonna call the Jason Bourne / Taken effect, where we were in this weird era, and I guess we still kind of are, where what is defined as cool / making a competent action movie is just shaking the camera around like a person, like the cinematographer was on seizure or some shit and doing some quick cut edit bullshit. I hate that style of action. I don't know why that ever became popular, but people liked it for some reason. And this is more in line with what I want. Like it's crazy. Like the way the film is shot in general like changes like throughout the film. Like it starts out more steady cam, more like the shots are more more stabilized, but then as the film goes on it gets way more chaotic, it gets way more like handheld, like I wouldn't call it shaky cam because that's not what they're going for at all, but it's very like handheld cam where it's like it's so in your face and so grimy. It's like a very chaotic, like very like guerrilla style of filmmaking that I think absolutely works in this film. It's like what I said before, where it's like it starts out as John Woo and then ends as Sammo Hung, Bruce Lee, Jet Li type, action movie. This is the similar thing when in terms of its shot. Like it starts out very stable and very like more focused filmmaking, and then by the end it becomes super chaotic and more guerrilla style directing. But it works both ways. Like both style of filmmaking works super super well within the context of this movie, because like the way they shot the fight scenes, you kind of have to shoot it that way, like if you at least want to make it look good. Like there's no way you can like put a stabilizer on a camera in front of the final fight between the henchman guy and then the two brothers. There's no way you could have just like stably shot that. You have to move around, you have to move the camera around, and it works very very well.
Definitely. That's one of the biggest takeaways is that Gareth Evans definitely knows how to be a dynamic filmmaker. He's constantly, like, as you said, like, I think the way there's different ways they shot this, and I think that's inevitable. You have to do that with a movie specifically like on this subject matter within the one location sort of set, because you have to keep it interesting. You have to keep it dynamic, because especially with a movie like this, it's probably extremely easy for it to get flat and boring very quickly if you just shoot it the same way.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that Gareth Evans was also talking about the way he implemented like different fighting techniques to sort of keep it interesting and sort of different every couple few every time they
it's always different.
It's always different, and it's always like inventive too.
Yeah, like it's always like at some point they're shooting guns, and then at some point they're wielding like knives or machetes, and at some point they're using their fists. It's like it's never the same type of action. They're always trying to either change it up or one up each other. It's always fresh. I'm never bored when I'm watching this movie.
No, for sure, and it's always it's really inventive in the aspect where it's always implementing its surroundings. Like as we mentioned, like that whole like the whole concept of the fridge is insane. Like putting the gas tank in the fridge and then a grenade and using that as like as a bomb is crazy. That whole scene is really great, and it even like sort of mixes up different genres for a bit. Like I don't know if it was intentional, but I felt like Gareth Evans was almost making sort of like a backdoor zombie movie in some aspects.
Kind of, yeah.
That whole sequence where they like cut a hole, or they do something to the floor where they're able to get through it, and someone jumps through the floor, and then like a group of the residents just grab him, and they're almost like zombies. It was crazy. I was like, what is happening here? We're going through so many different genres.
like I said, it's like it's almost gets like horror-esque kind
Yeah.
of in this like very bloody and gory action movie, which I guess makes sense because he also made like a horror movie for Netflix or something. What was it called?
Apostle, I think.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have never seen it, but I just know he made it.
Yeah. Which is interesting because I was looking up his filmography and he hasn't done anything as of late, which is crazy because I think Gareth Evans should be given more sort of like mid-sized budgets to do action like this.
I think he's making he has a new film coming out this year. I think it's called Havoc. It has like Tom Hardy and like a pretty big cast.
Interesting.
I don't know when it's coming out. It doesn't even have a trailer, but I just know it's coming out at some point this year.
Okay.
Yeah. And this film and what I wanted to briefly mention is and I mentioned this in the Pirates of the Caribbean discussion where it's like in that one you can clearly tell that there were stunt people at some point, but this it's like, oh yeah, everyone is doing their own action scenes, everyone can clearly fight, everyone can clearly like throw their own punch, and everyone can clearly like take a hit and stuff. Like if there were stunt people, I didn't notice, like it was it was very well masked if it was, but everyone, like from what I understand, the entire cast are like they're all stunt people, like they're all veteran, like they all know how to fight, and they all do their stunts very well. I have this philosophy, in my opinion, where it's great if you can get an actor that knows how to fight, but in my honest opinion, I would prefer that action movies cast stuntmen who can act instead of actors who can fight, if that makes sense.
Well, that's exactly what this movie did. All the main cast are primarily stunt people, yeah.
Yeah, and they could all like relatively act. They could all like give decent performances.
They do fine.
You know,
yeah, it's not super dense material either.
Yeah, it's like I think like there was probably at most like 30 minutes of dialogue.
There's got to be. Yeah, there's got to be.
Yeah, because it's not a very talky focused movie, but at the same time that's not what it's going for at all.
No.
It doesn't need to be that way. Like exactly what we were mentioning before. It's like, cut the bullshit, don't waste my motherfucking time, just get straight to the point.
Vincent Hanna.
Just get straight into the action. Yeah, it goes straight Al Pacino. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but even if there is dialogue, it's all like logistic based. It's like, we have to get here before this point, otherwise this will happen. We've got to rescue this person, we've got to shoot this it's all like sort of like, it's very all quick, and it's like it gets you thinking and it gets you exhausted by the end, because there is never like, from memory at least, because I only just watched this yesterday, there's never a moment of dialogue where it's just we said this at the start, it's just fat. There's no fat. It's all like sort of every piece, every word of dialogue, it's always got to get to the next thing. We got to get to the next thing. Where's this person? Where's this person?
This is the opposite of like a Taken movie, where like the movie stops every 5 minutes for Liam Neeson to give some fucking vague like old man monologue about how like the old man is gonna get you or something like that. This is this is like the opposite of that. Yeah,
kind of crazy to think of a completely exposition-less movie. There's not a single bit of it, not from memory at least.
Yeah, and I mean, but at the same time, it's maybe to everyone's taste as well.
The whole sequence where the main cop is sort of talking up his crew, and he's sort of giving, that's just sort of exposition, and but that's stuff
it's just finish your thought. Yeah, I was just gonna say the same thing.
Yeah, it's just sort of, that's just setting up what the movie is, I guess you could say. But that's from memory at least. That's the only sort of quote unquote exposition I could think of.
Yeah, stuff like that you just have to put in the movie.
Yeah.
You know, like you just
otherwise you're like, what the fuck are we doing?
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, but I wish, I guess like that's one of the few flaws, because as much as I love this movie, I don't think it's a perfect film because of moments like these. Because like I think the whole like when the cop just is sitting in a truck and just explaining like, all right, boys, like we gotta plan this out, this is what we're doing, blah 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 blah. Like I understand you need stuff like that, but like at the same time, there are ways to make things like that way more creative. Like a go-to prime example that I think of is something like Crank. Like in Crank, when exposition is delivered, like shit is happening at the
Yes.
same time while exposition is being delivered. Like that scene where like Jason Statham is like driving through a mall, and then like the doctor is like explaining to him like what the hell that main bad guy infected him,
Yeah.
with the disease, and like what he's got to do to like he tells him, oh, you got to keep your heart rate up, you got to always be on the move, you always got to like blah blah blah, all this other stuff. But while they're giving you exposition, there's something is
driving through a
happening.
fucking
Jason
shopping
Statham
mall.
is Jason Statham is driving through a mall, and there's nothing really like that in
Very
this. It's
good
just
comparison.
like, all right, yeah, all right, we just got to set up the movie, we got to do some exposition, and then all right, let's just get this over with. All right, finally, we're done with that. Now let's just get straight into the action scene. I wish it was like the exposition was better spiced, better thrown in, but whatever.
I think
that's such like a small flaw.
That leads into such a good point where we sort of briefly discussed this on Pirates, where we don't get blockbusters like this anymore. I don't think we get action movies like this anymore. To the point, I know some people are immediately going to jump the gun and argue this is very John Wick, but John Wick to me is almost like the clean version of this. This is a filthy fucking movie. This is dirty.
It is gross, and I fucking love it.
Yeah, my biggest problem. I'm gonna say that I prefer this over the John Wick films purely for that fact alone, because
I do too.
I love the John Wick movies enough. I think they're perfect pieces of like sort of action genre cinema that like look gorgeous, but they completely lack the effect that the raid has, where you feel like after the raid, when the raid's credits are rolling, you want to have a shower. And that's something I don't think action movies have anymore, is legitimate grit and like dirt into it. It's like dirt under your fingernails, sort of action filmmaking. Yeah, exactly. There's too much. And
I'm glad you.
No, sorry, you go.
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah. Oh, I'm glad you brought this up, because I was gonna say the same thing. In all honesty, this movie kind of ruined John Wick for me a little bit.
No, I'm 100% with you. I'm 100% with you.
Yeah. Because like, so I saw John Wick like before a bunch of times before I rewatched this movie. Okay, it ruined John Wick in two ways. One is the more superficial way, where it ruined John Wick 3 for me, because in John Wick 3, if you remember, before John Wick goes up against the bald Asian boy, he goes up against the guys from the raid, the two guys from the raid,
Oh, because they're actually in it, aren't
the
they?
small knives. They're actually in the movie.
The actual same actor,
I think to myself, and I'm like, bullshit. Like, there's no way these guys would, like, after what I saw in the raid, there is no way those guys would get their ass like easily handed to them by Keanu just slapping them around with like a belt and then like his palms or whatever. I find that so unbelievable after I saw the raid. That's just no movie.
It's not happening. It's not happening.
Do that. Yeah.
No.
But then, but in terms of like a more broader and more, important reason of why this movie ruined John Wick for me is what you said. The fights in John Wick are, in my opinion, too clean and too precise. Now, to be fair, that's what the movies are going for. That's the John Wick character. He's a clean, precise killer. He prefers just shooting people in the head instead of, doing one-on-one combat. So, like,
literally
that makes
slitting
sense.
people's throats open.
Yeah, exactly. But even then, like, it's like it's too clean and it's too precise. It's like it doesn't. It seems like John Wick is like. It's not. It doesn't go like dirty and grimy like what this movie does.
No.
Like these characters get fucked. Like even the characters that survive, they get fucked. Like the guy that gets shot and like the main guy has to like carry around and then eventually like use like the dull knife to like pry the bullet out of his body or whatever. The guy who's limping. It's like. It's so brutal. Like even the main the main character, the main protagonist, like he's not this like Bruce Lee badass who can just beat anyone.
No, he's
like
a cop.
he yeah, he's just a cop. He's a rookie. He gets his ass handed. Like he couldn't have beaten the final bad guy without A, his brother, and B, a fucking pipe lodged into his neck. That was the only way he could actually beat him. It's like and again, this is what I'm missing from most action movies, where it's like the main protagonist never feels challenged. He never feels like he has real stakes. He never feels like he's actually like, oh, there's a chance I could actually lose this fight. Like when I first saw this film, I legitimately had no clue if the main character was going to survive or not. Like that's how great this film establishes tension, establishes stakes, establishes just the bare minimum that you need to hit with action movies. Because like even the John Wick films, it's like John Wick's not going to die.
Oh, it's Keanu Reeves. That's why.
Yeah, he's Keanu Reeves. He's not going to die. Like let's not get ahead of ourselves,
Yeah.
And like that's the problem with most modern action movies / Marvel movies. There are no real stakes. These characters are going to live because Disney has a lot of stakes in making them merchandisable characters and like dolls and action figures and shit. So there's no tension. But in this movie, like there's constant tension. You have no clue who's going to live. You have no clue who's going to die. You don't even know if like the main character is going to make it out in the end. And when he does, it's satisfying. He earned this moment. He went through hell and back to finally get to the point where he can finally leave in peace. And it wasn't easy. He had a lot of injuries. He got his ass handed to him a couple times. But that's what makes a character interesting. That's what makes an action hero interesting. It's that they're not perfect. They're not like these suave, like invincible Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone type action heroes. Like they're flawed characters. And this movie just does all of that so well. Like I cannot express how much I have a boner for this for this film. So,
no, I think you're totally right in saying like I mentioned, like previously, like we talked about with Pirates, like we just don't get them like we do anymore. Where you could easily pair this one with Crank, where we don't get action movies with the dirt or the grit anymore. The action in the John Wick movies to me have always been more focused on sort of the pretty lights and sort of the choreography rather than the violence itself. The violence itself for me has always come second in those movies. It's more of the craft and sort of how gorgeous we can light this set piece and that sort of thing, where this is like dirty, disgusting hotel rooms. It's got like narcotics labs. It's breaking glass over people's faces. It's like throwing people out of multiple windows. It's just torn bodies and blood-stained concrete. It really is. I am sounding like a broken record, but I really do wish we would get more movies like this. And even like, as we mentioned, like the Crank movies.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish we had more. I wish there were more Neville Dean and Taylors and Gareth Evanses in the world.
Yes.
To make more interesting and exciting action films like this.
And even people thinking like The Raid, like really, isn't that just like that non-stop action movie? But like as we've mentioned, it finds way to be invented. That whole sequence where our main dude is, it only took me halfway through the scene to realize what was happening. But he was fighting like 10 dudes with machetes, and he had nothing got him. And I was like, that is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And somehow, keeps it inventive, keeps it witty. Like witty action is really important. And a constant rhythm of like changing scenery, despite the fact we're in the locked one location.
Yeah, and fuck, I actually forgot my point.
The Raid fried our brains.
Yeah, but I at the same time, as much as what we've been saying, we wish there were more action movies like this. We also have to remember that we're kind of in the minority, because this
no one wants
isn't really no one wants. Like I remember I saw Roger Ebert's review. Roger Ebert hated this film. He absolutely like despised this movie. He gave it like a 1 star or something like that.
Interesting.
Because like his main source of frustration, it's like it's just action after action. Like, where's the character? How am I supposed to care? Like, where's the part that I'm supposed to like? Where's the part where the character gets development and all this other stuff? And like, if that's what you want from your action movies, then all the more power to you. That's fine, But like for me personally, this is more in line with what I want. Like because another great action movie like Mad Max Fury Road, I recently talked about that on my podcast. That's another movie where they just cut the bullshit and just get straight into the film. And that's also a movie where when they do exposition, they're doing something cool. They're doing something creative. They're like showing stuff while they're explaining the exposition. And then once all that's done, they just get in, they get straight into the action, and they use the action scene. They use action scenes and they use violence and explosions as a form of storytelling. Like, I think that's really the beauty of action movies, especially these kinds of action movies, where they don't need to rely on dialogue. They just need to use their fists or their guns or whatever like weapons
Literally
they have at their
anything in the room.
disposals.
Yeah.
Yeah, anything in the room. Like, the action tells the story. The action is the driving force of the story. The action is the dialogue, and to an extent, the music accompanying the action scenes are the dialogue that the characters speak. The characters don't need to say much. They don't need to have much character because that's not required. Because that's not the type of movie we're in. Like,
No.
action movies should be fun. They should be sex, drugs, and rock and roll. You know, that was like the motto Neville Dean and Taylor had when they made Crank. You know, and I wish more action movies were like that, but I guess we're in the minority. That's not really what most people want from action movies these days, I guess.
Unfortunately, yeah. It's kind of insane to think at one point this was you know, in prestige film festivals, something this disgusting and gritty. But funny enough, was like sort of met with the positive audience reactions at the time. So that's why this obviously grown such a mammoth cult following, and you know, got the sequel out of it, which I haven't seen myself, but you've said you've seen.
Yeah, I saw it a long time ago, back in the day.
From what you remember,
does
it hold the same amount of nihilism as the first one?
Yeah, pretty much, but at the same time, so the second one, and anyone can correct me if I'm wrong, because it has been a very long time since I've seen the second one. The second one is more epic in scope. It's like, it still has all the like the kitchen fight scene is like the go-to scene that I remember, where it's like, oh yeah, this is definitely the Raid. This is definitely from the same director, because the action scenes still are awesome, and they are still adrenaline fueled, heart pumping. But that one is slower, because they're in the second one, they're more trying to be this like epic crime action movie narrative, where there's more emotional scenes and there's more dramatic scenes, and there's scenes that like stop to like tell the story and stuff like that. I could be wrong because it has been a while, but I remember the second one being much slower and more focused on the story than the first one.
Interesting. No, I'm very keen to check it out eventually, because I will have to, because obviously this is just, you know, we keep praising it, and we're very right to do so, because it is just, it's so it's for something as disgusting and dirty as this, it's so refreshing to catch something like this, especially in a world full of like of the big John Wick movies and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I again, like you said, I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but I want my action movies dirty. I want my action movies grimy. I want my action movies in the trenches, you know, along with, you know, I just want there to be consequence. I want to act when someone punches someone or stabs someone or shoots someone, I want to feel it, you know. I mean, not actually like feel it as in I want to die or anything, but like, I want to feel the impact of those punches and kicks made when they land, you know? And again, like, and it really sells, the movie sells its action because the actors are doing the stunts themselves. And it gets very brutal, like even like fist fights. Like I completely forgot how brutal the fist fights are.
Really
in
blunt
this movie.
and like,
Yeah, very bloody. Like when the right hand man of the main gangster like goes up against like the police sergeant or whatever, and at a certain point he's just like pummeling after pummeling after pummeling, and then just like snaps his neck. It's like, ugh, Jesus, like that was brutal, man.
It's also a really great sort of like juxtaposition too within the actual film itself, where you get these very over the top, insane sort of sequencing with, you know, punching and swords and guns. But by the time it finishes, we just hold on our hero, who is just exhausted, and all he can do is just move up to the next floor and do it all over again.
Yeah.
So it is great on that regard. But probably pivoting towards final thoughts on the Raid. Timmy, what's our final thoughts?
Yeah, in my opinion, I think this is one of the best action movies ever made, at least for me. But at the same time, I can understand this not being everyone's cup of tea. Everyone has their
Oh,
preferred
definitely
style of
not.
action
No.
movies. Because in my opinion, I'm kind of way past. I've outgrown those old Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone style action movies. I've definitely grown past the shitty, boring Taken style, shaky cam action movie style.
Mhm.
You know, and this is more in line with kind of what I'm interested in and more what I want from modern action movies. And yeah, they ruined John Wick.
Thank you,
I
Gareth
wish,
Evans.
yeah, thank you, Derek. Not Derek, Gareth. I don't know why I said
Eric.
Derek. God, I'm so tired. Yeah, I apparently there was like he conceptualized a story for the Raid 3, but then just never followed through with it because he just wasn't interested anymore. I
Oh,
don't know.
okay.
I would have preferred if there was a Raid 3, but
It
I
would
don't know
be
if that's still
nice
happening.
in sort of the complete factor to have this as a trilogy. That'd be quite cool.
Yeah, that would have been so cool because I'm not like a big fan of like duologies if both movies are really really good because it's like, oh damn, if there was only a third movie, this could have been a trilogy, you know. But
Yeah,
oh
that'd be
well,
nice.
whatever. So yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, overall, love the way it's shot, love the
Mm.
music, love the fight scenes, love how this is what I was saying too about Pirates, where it's like they keep cutting away every time the impact is made. Like I want to see some level of consequence, and this movie like said, "Oh, you want consequence? We're gonna avalanche you." You
Fucking ram it down your throat.
with consequence. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I love it. I treat me like one of your French girls. The Raid. Treat me. I'm naughty. Shove it down my throat.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
No, yeah, took the words right out of my mouth. Like, I mean, like, yeah, unfortunately, like that's just news to me. I haven't heard about the sort of conceptual idea of a third one, which would be very cool. But yeah, no, just incredibly refreshing to see something as mean-spirited as this can get. Like, there are a handful of sequences in this where I'm like, oh my god, I can't believe like sort of this was met with like a positive reaction at sort of like prestige screenings and festivals, which is just really shocking.
Yeah, it's a Sony Pictures classic. You know, it's a Sony Pictures classic movie.
That's the
It's like,
craziest thing.
yeah, it's like in an ideal world, this would just be another like big budget studio movie that people would finance and pay tickets to see. But no, like this is a very specific style action movies that I guess is just isn't appealing to the modern populace. You know, it's why like its premiere wasn't like in front of a big normal audience. It was in front of TIFF. You know, it was in front of film festivals.
Yeah.
So
yeah. But yeah, almost like a lightning in a bottle effect where you got the right people working on the right thing at the right time and you know, just blew up into this massive cult movie where, you know, it is for the majority loved by a lot of sort of action heads and as praised as one of the more leading frontiers of what we get now. Because obviously, like, you know, we keep mentioning it, but this surely had to inspire the John Wick movies on just how the action is shot.
I would be shocked if it wasn't if
Yeah,
it didn't. I
had to
mean,
be.
they literally had the raid guys in the third
There we
movie.
go.
Like,
that
if
says it
not,
all.
like,
Yeah, exactly. That can't
yeah,
be a
that says it
coincidence.
all. Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, but just an insane sort of like companion piece to the older sort of like Asian action cinema we would get. You know, as Timmy mentioned, like a handful of great stuff there. So yeah, no, check out The Raid, that fucking disgusting movie. It's awesome.
Yeah, I honestly kind of wanted to. After I very rarely feel this way about movies these days. Where after I finished it, I was like, man, if I had more time, I could probably just start from the beginning and play it again.
Oh
you
yeah,
know?
it's definitely
Like,
one of those.
Is that fun?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you've never seen The Raid 2?
No, so that's something I'm probably going to have to check out very soon because I'm very eager to check
Oh
that out.
wow. Okay. So this is the first time you've seen this film?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
But yeah, no, The Raid 2 I'm going to have to get on to very quickly.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that because, like I said, like from my memory, that one's more slower and more narrative focused. But
something
you know,
the complete
so
complete opposite of what the first one has on its mind.
Well, at the same time, though, I also think it's just a matter of like sequel syndrome, where it's like, oh, the first one was successful. Here, we have a bigger budget, we have a lot more money, so we're gonna use that money to just expand and go bigger and better and epic
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Because the Raid 2 is like the complete opposite of this one, where like the first one was like contained within a building, but this one is like some massive
world.
epic within open world within like the city life of Indonesia and stuff like that, So
Clearly the example of like Gareth Evans given more money and going, okay, let's do the raid, but like more, like in more expansive locations and that sort of thing, which is I'm interested to check that out. But with that, this is our job now, Tim. Why would Curse of the Black Pearl from 2003 and The Raid from 2011 pair well as a good double feature?
They're both practically driven action movies.
Perfect.
They both feature swords. They both have hints of horror elements within their respective films, which is unusual for their specific genres. They're both made by directors who made a horror film at some point.
There we go. That's a good point. Yeah. No,
Let's
I was going to
see what
say
else.
sort of the two the way I pair these movies together is Lost to Time movies, as if we don't get blockbusters like that anymore, and we just simply don't get action movies like this anymore.
Oh, that's what you were going. Okay, yeah. I was trying to see if is there some like 4D chess that I'm not thinking of that you're overpowering with me right now. So yeah, but that makes sense.
But yeah, no, I want to thank you, man, for coming on. This is the time I normally give my guests anything they want to plug, anything you've got in the works at the moment that you want to reach out to people and let them know about. So the stage is yours, man. What have we got in the works?
Sure. I mean, recently I uploaded a review for the new Charlie Kaufman DreamWorks animated film Orion in the Dark, which is coming out on Netflix February 2nd. I really loved it to the point that I was like, well, I might as well make content out of this. So I made a review, a quick video review about the film on my channel. You can check that out. Other than that, the only thing I have on my cards right now is just another anime video for Valentine's Day. And I'll just leave it at that, I guess. And then like more episodes on the podcast coming soon. Yeah, just like more bi-weekly episodes of the podcast that's churning out no matter what. So
beautiful. So that's the Far Films podcast. You guys can find on YouTube. A very phenomenal podcast.
Thank you. Yeah.
No, but that's it. I want to thank you so much, man, for coming on and talking about these two movies. It was an absolute wild time. We grunged up a lot of points that I never thought we'd get to. It was a really fun time.
Yeah, I can't wait to re-listen to this and be all like, oh, so that's how I sound like, or that's what I mention when my brain is fried from lack of sleep. So, yeah.
No, sounds good to me, man. Okay, well, until then, thank you guys for listening, and I'll see y'all next time.